Hello, everybody, and welcome to our 9th live-streamed Automation Village virtual trade show. My name is Chris Little.
And I'm Dave Spencer.
And we are both coming to you live from Bedford, Nova Scotia, where our headquarters are located. But in just a few minutes, we're going to strap the flux capacitor onto the virtual VW van and catapult ourselves into the future.
That's right. So yeah, we've got a pretty interesting show coming up. So we're going to be doing interviewing a number of guests, and we're also going to place the show through a few different time periods. So it's going to be a little unique for our 9th episode. But
as always, we kind of try to bring together a combination of industry experts and also virtual exhibitors to tell us about various kinds of technologies and issues related to the automation industry.
Yeah, that's right. So they'll be presenting for you guys today. We'll do a little bit about VTScada today as well, but we've also got prizes for you guys during the show today.
Yeah, so definitely hang in there. We're going to give away 2 prizes, which are pretty significant. You'll be able to use those in the future. By that, I mean...
hopefully in the near future.
That's right. So to do that, I think on the screen here, you should see some of the details. We're going to do 2 giveaways. Basically, we're going to put 2 different codes on the screen. You're going to type those codes as you see them exactly into the subject line of an email.
Right, and that email is going to go out to natasha.lutz@trihedral.com. You should also see that on the screen. Now, you're also seeing on the screen a few special conditions. So, Chris, who is not eligible to join this contest?
Anyone from the future is not eligible for these prizes for obvious reasons. But also anyone working for Trihedral or any of our different offices, any of our staff, any of our families, of course, any of our exhibitors today or any of their friends and families. If you don't fall into any of those categories and you're not from the future, you're good to go.
Cool. So why don't we talk a little bit about the Automation Village just in general for the next couple minutes. So the Automation Village really is about trying to bring people together, make an easy source for people to get information on sort of the latest and greatest when it comes to SCADA and automation technologies, and also learn not only about what's going on in the Automation Village, but today in our first exhibit, we're going to talk a little bit to somebody who's got kind of a similar program offering. And they're going to tell us a little bit about what they're doing on their show to see if you'd be interested in that as well.
Great. So joining us now is TJ Murphy, and he is from Powergen. He is the head of on-site power and renewable energy at Powergen. Welcome, TJ. How are you today?
I'm very well, thank you. Thanks for having me.
I'm glad to have you here. How's the weather where you are, and where is that?
I'm in the Northeast. I'm in lovely Connecticut,
Nice.
And the weather seems to be cooperating. We haven't got much snow, which is good, but it's also a bright sunny day.
Nice.
Right.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about Powergen, just so we get a sense of what that is.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. So Powergen International is a business and networking hub for utilities, electricity generators, and solution providers engaged in power generation. We're a trade show at heart. We're owned by Clarion Energy North America, and we basically run a series of 8 to 10 trade shows throughout the year covering several different topics. But Powergen is just as it sounds, power generation.
Right. And cool. Of course, sorry, go ahead, Dave.
No, finish what you were going to say, Chris.
Just as us, your business, your core business, ours, a large part of what we do in the marketing department at Trihedral is visit trade shows. That's a big way in which we get to meet people and people get to learn about our technologies, our VTScada software. But of course, this year has thrown a wrench into all of that. And so how have you, one of the ways we overcome it was with this virtual trade show. How have you been overcoming the challenges of this year?
No, and we're copying your platform, really, at the end of the day.
You're welcome.
So what we've done is because we are a face-to-face trade show, you can't connect with people without having some type of connection. And the virtual world is really where we're at today. So what we've done is we've launched Powergen Plus. It's a virtual trade show, but it's a little bit different. It's a little bit an event series. It's like no other, meaning that each month, similar to you, copying what you're doing here, focuses on a monthly 2-day virtual event. And it's designed to keep buyers and sellers connected in a virtual world. It's on a platform similar to LinkedIn. So you create a profile as a member, you join, and partners have a partner page on that platform as well. And it's really content driven. So each month we cover a specific topic for the future of power generation. We're not looking to do stuff that in the coal sense or anything else, but we're looking for the future of power generation and what interests our audience the most. So it's a really neat platform.
Now, how long have you been working with this new platform?
Great question. So we launched it in September. We have over 2,400 members on the platform as we speak today. So that's registered members. And we continue to have each month a series of topics. So for instance, September was pushing the power generation envelope. October was renewables and storage. November was Destination 2050, zero carbon and reliability. And December is going to be cybersecurity and the digital power plant. And we're happy to have Trihedral as part of that as well.
Great. And so how have people responded to this?
With open arms. As you probably know, it's hard today with everybody being at home to connect and to communicate. And it's really a disruptive time. This pandemic has actually accelerated what we've planned to do in the future. And we just don't know how this is going to turn out. So we've really, 3 out of 5 of our buyers surveyed say that they need to have a virtual component to source new materials and new products. And they're turning to a lot of these platforms.
Now, did you bring some slides that you wanted to show us?
Yeah, I mean, just real quick, I do have a couple here. There we go.
Great.
There we go.
Perfect.
So, just to kind of recap what we went over, Powergen Plus series it's a Phoenix product out of Powergen, the physical event. It's a monthly virtual event, and it's really a platform for the power sector, similar to LinkedIn if you think about it. So it's really designed to connect buyers in this virtual world. So our audience still needs to learn, they still need to compare, they still need to analyze, they need to make decisions for these future projects. So what we're doing is with this, it's all content driven. We want everything to be educationable. And at the end of the day, it's a searchable library of content for the power sector. So if there happens to be a topic, we want our audience to go back to this platform, that go back to it to look up new contacts, connect with people of like interests, as well as get content that was delivered maybe just recently or in the past. So, and it gives opportunities for everybody to have a thought leadership, to be unique in sense. The platform itself offers many different variations. It could be TED Talks, it could be panel discussions. We even have one session that's going to be a flyover of a power plant and what that consists of.
Nice.
So it's really an interactive, easy to use platform. And these slides here really, the next one is this is what we've covered in the past. And I just kind of went through it. So we'll have 4 educational editorial topics throughout the 2 days. Those are presented by our editorial staff from Power Engineering, from Renewable Energy World, from Powergen International, and we'll carry that forward with some of the thought leadership and industry experts from some of our sponsors and partners. So as you can see in 2021, we're not just stopping at cybersecurity. We're going to go into the workforce, how the workforce affected by COVID-19, the aging workforce of the 21st century, optimizing these power plants. I mean, at the end of the day, we need to be more efficient. We need to be more dialed into what tomorrow is going to offer us. And we need to be prepared for that. So really optimizing the power plant, digitization is a really big part of the future of electricity and decarbonization. But I do want to just end with one last slide. And at the end, the world is recovering. And this crisis has accelerated the shift away from conventional generation. It made us think more. If you think about the airlines, they've been grounded for some time. Automobiles weren't being used. So it did show the carbon emissions being reduced throughout the time of this pandemic. So we're looking to help our audience, help everybody scale decarbonization, use more technology, understand where our data is and how to make informed decisions faster and more accurately. We want to grow the portfolios of these utilities because we know that coal is certainly taking a backseat and declining at a rapid pace.
That's great. That all sounds like really interesting material. So we've found, of course, although everyone's really eager to get back to live in-person events, there are a few real advantages to being able to reach out to people in this way. What are you finding to be the advantages and disadvantages or challenges associated with communicating online as opposed to in person?
So the challenges we see is there's certainly everybody does want to have a human connection.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very hard through a digital platform to have that human connection. I can't shake your hand. I can't give you my physical business card. I can't, to a certain extent, see your body language. We find that to be a challenge right now, and trying to duplicate that in the digital world is certainly a challenge. What the advantages are is that you could quickly move from one event to the other, from one topic to the other. The speed of information is there. The library of information is there. The content that's being delivered and being sourced today is enormous, immense. So we see that a huge advantage in the ability to dive into specific topics and really pull them apart, being able to get really the granular pieces of that in so many different variations. So the advantage is, I would say, is the speed that the internet has brought to us.
Wow, that's great. So thank you very much for that. Although I think we lost your camera there. If you want to turn yourself back on just in time to say, how can people reach you?
No, absolutely. Hopefully you can see me now. Unshare. There we go. Sorry about that.
No problem. That's live television. And then turn the camera on and the little icon on the left.
See?
Bingo.
It's a two-step process, right? Although we do rely on technology, there are some people like myself that struggle with it. But at the end of the day, you can reach me by, you could just give me a call at 312-667-1451, or just send me an email at tj.murphy@clarionevents.com.
And we'll make sure all that information is in the description and also on our website.
Perfect. And TJ, we're looking forward to seeing you again later in December when we will be on your show, Powergen Plus.
Oh yeah.
Oh, we are looking forward to it and all the information that you guys bring to the table. We're really excited.
Great. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Excellent. All right. I feel generous. I feel like we should be
Are you feeling
giving away something?
So let's get on then with our first prize draw, and hopefully you guys are looking at the screen right now. You should be seeing the first code that you're going to put in the subject line of an email to natasha.lutz@trihedral.com. And Chris, that code is
automation from the future.
Yes, and you have to write it exactly like Chris said it. No, write it exactly how you see it.
Yeah, italics won't help. So type that in now and hit send, and you should know. When do we announce our winners? I think basically by the end of day today, you should know whether you won or not. And of course, there'll be another draw later on today. And again, if you work for Trihedral, or if you work for any of the companies that are appearing today or are related to any of those people, you are not eligible. Great. So moving right on, next up we have Zane Spencer, and he's with MPE, and he's going to join us now to talk about making SCADA programming more efficient, which is certainly a very important thing as we move into the future right now.
Yeah. So how are you doing, Zane?
I'm doing good. Dave and Chris, how are you fellows this morning?
Great.
Yeah, it was great. It was, there's always a bit of drama leading up to the live stream, and this was no different. But even that's become comfortable. I think we've all become more comfortable in this online state.
You bet. Well, I'm excited this morning to share some stuff live, and hopefully technology all behaves. Yeah, so I want to talk a little bit about making SCADA programming more efficient, and I think this is important as we look to the future because we can't keep doing things the same way. We want to drive efficiency in the automation we do. And in the end, that's going to drive our ability to innovate and do new and exciting things. So I'm going to share my screen now, and just bear with me while I get that going. All right. So where I want to start with driving efficiency is actually in the PLCs that our SCADA systems are connecting to. And the most important thing there is to, if at all possible, define a data structure, define a reusable data structure, as well as reusable data components, so add-on instructions or blocks of code that can run and do the same thing over and over. And you can do this in all of the major automation platforms, whether it's an Allen Bradley PLC or a Schneider PLC, a GE PLC, a Horner unit, or even a SCADA pack. There's a lot of tools available to get to that level of standardization, but it does take some forethought. And the big advantage that we see, I'm going to switch into a live demo now where I actually have Logix 5000 running. And the biggest advantage we see is it reduces the amount of time that it takes to implement code. So I can now in my PLC program very quickly drop in, say, an analog add-on instruction, and I'm going to create a new device. So let's call it LIT 777. And with just a few more clicks, I will have a device in a PLC and logic for it running. There we go. And then I can jump right into VTScada. And so the trick is that on the VTScada side of things, we also want to create a data structure, a type. And we want that to have all of the same members that that type in the PLC had. And then we can do some really cool things using parameter expressions to automate the things like I/O addressing. So I can now add this device that I just created in the PLC. And give it a couple of parameters. And once I've done that, we'll see it show up. And within a few seconds, we'll see all of the data points are already communicating with the PLC. And that's because in each of these tags that are within there, we've used parameter expressions to create things like the descriptors and the I/O addresses. So you don't have to do anything other than name the tag correctly and have the right hierarchy set up to quickly add it into VTScada. And then, of course, moving beyond tags, we get into the actual graphics side. And so ahead of time, before you get to actually developing screens, you want to go through and ensure that you've created widgets, so actual display widgets and pop-ups that are associated with those. And then what you can do after you've created tags, you can very quickly drag and drop those widgets onto screens. Let's draw one more. Actually, it showed up there. And so the last step of it then is to actually get in and to configure this instrument. So we actually use SCADA now to do the device configuration. So rather than going through the PLC and enabling and configuring all of your alarms, this can be done directly from SCADA. And you'll see as I'm configuring the alarm, the widgets are updating in real time.
That's great.
And even things like alarm priorities can be changed. And then the last step, once I get my scaling parameters in, we'll actually see data start coming in from this. And I can clean up that graphic a little bit, which I forgot to do, of course, because of the live nature of this. So I can set the color on it, give it some opacity so we can see the trend behind it.
That looks great.
Cool.
Still didn't do exactly what I wanted it to, of course. But the point is that by having done the work ahead of time, developing these standards and having everything in place, it can really, really cut down on the amount of time that it takes you to develop SCADA applications. And so because you're not spending all of your time stuck in the tag database or configuring things in the PLC, you can put a lot more effort into building really nice graphics, that look well, that look good, they follow the high performance standards, and you can have very intricate pop-ups that are standardized and the same for all of your various pieces of equipment.
Cool. Thanks, Zane. That's a really, really nice demo. Now, we just have a minute left, so I want to just jump to one question that I know I've been eager to ask you, and that's you talked about standards, but you also showed a lot of really innovative stuff, a lot of fairly new stuff. So tell us a little bit about balancing that, like sort of innovative nature, but also staying within those standards that tend to be much slower moving.
Yeah, so that's a great question. And we're a big fan of incremental improvement. So the standards are good. things like the data types or the structures, you don't want to adjust those on every single project you do. But there are times where, you want to add to them, or you want to introduce a little bit of functionality. So it's important to not be too rigid on your standards, to embrace some innovation and change as you go through.
Right. Awesome. Well, thank you very much. We really appreciate you joining us today. That's a fantastic demo. It's a nice application that you've built there. And the fact that it's modular and you can just basically spin up for your next group, whatever it is, then that's really nice to see you building on previous work and using those parameter expressions and those tag types to make it efficient.
That. Okay,
Well, great. Thanks,
Cool.
Zane. Thanks for joining us.
Right. Bye for now.
Thanks.
Yeah, those were some of the nicest looking high performance screens that I've seen. Everyone's sort of scrambling to put that methodology to work, and people are really starting to do some amazing things with it. So that was really great. Moving forward, next up we have Trent Hilliard. Now, back earlier this year, there was a lot of talk about the need for a Spark-Plug-B utility in VTScada. In fact, that was one of the things that was talked about a lot at our last VTScada Fest, which happened just before people couldn't be in the same room together. And in the time since then, we've actually, this team of programmers that includes Trent, actually developed this, and it is now available in VTScada. So we thought we'd bring on Trent Hilliard. He's an engineer with VTScada by Trihedral. Hey, Trent, how are you?
Good. How about you, Chris?
I'm great. Thanks for coming on today. We kind of threw this at you at the last minute, so we appreciate you taking this time. So I guess tell us a little bit about, tell us about what is Spark-Plug-B. A lot of people may have heard this term, but not had a good understanding of what it means.
Yeah, well, Spark-Plug-B is an industrial Internet of Things protocol that's based on the MQTT framework, designed to allow SCADA systems to automatically generate tags from information passed to them from their end devices.
Right. And so just to take a step back from that, this exists within the realm of IIoT or IoT, and which is another big buzzword that people may have nodded their head and said, yes, I know what that is. But tell us very briefly, what is IIoT?
It's a modern method to connect a lot of smaller scale industrial devices that may have information that they want to share with other end users, typically over the internet, and requires a common language between the devices for the connections to work. I'm just going to share my screen. I got a couple of diagrams that'll help explain what I'm looking at here. So I'll start kind of with your traditional SCADA system, something like Modbus, where you have your host system or your server, and you have multiple devices that you want to talk to. The first thing you notice is that your host has to create a connection to each end device that it wants to talk to get information from. And the other main difference between IIoT and Spark-Plug-B versus traditional is when you want to get data from your traditional system, you'll start by sending a polling request out to the device to say, hey, I want information from you. And then the device will turn around and send you data back to get you information. So that's the traditional SCADA sense that most people are familiar with. So what Spark-Plug-B does is kind of changes the logic around this. So instead of a host system requiring multiple connections to the end devices, it requires one connection to a central broker that is a publisher-subscriber that basically just is a data exchange. Data comes into it, and then it sends data out to whoever wants those pieces of information. So what you'll see here is the other big difference is that Spark-Plug-B is known as a report by exception protocol, where it will send data out whenever the data changes on the end device. So what you'll see is instead of initiating a request for, say, hey, I want data from you, and then it gets sent back, what the remote device will do, it will start by sending its data to the broker, and then the broker will send that data on to whoever subscribed to it, such as the SCADA host. So this is can be more efficient because you're only sending data one way. You're not sending a request and then a data back. And it also allows for, not shown in this diagram, but you can have multiple people consuming that one piece of data. So instead of multiple pieces of hardware requiring connections to a single device, you can get, it can just send one connection out, and then the broker does all the distribution of the information to and from different devices. So that's the main differences there. And because of this architecture where the device is responsible for sending information, it can also send everything you need to do to create tags within your SCADA system.
That's great.
And then if you're wondering how this is implemented within VTScada.
That was my next question.
Yeah. We set it up that it's part of the MQTT client driver tag. And in order to get tags in your VTScada system and end up with something similar to what you see on the screen here, is you only have to set up 2 tags. One is the driver tag itself, and then the other is the port tag used to initiate the connection with the MQTT broker. Once those 2 things are set up and you've chosen Sparkplug B option within the MQTT driver and allow it to automatically create tags within VTScada, if you fire up your end device, you'll automatically get a tag tree similar to what you see on the screen here underneath the Trihedral node under the Sparkplug B driver, as well as we will automatically populate controls within the sites page for this device. So within a matter of minutes, you can have tags and controls within your VTScada app to control these devices there. So that's the power of Sparkplug B as an implementation within VTScada.
That's really great. Can you tell us, now you've turned this around in a very short period of time. Can you just give us a really brief idea of what that development process looked like?
It's very team-oriented. We have teams of 2 or more working on all our features to do this, where we work in tandem to develop the multiple pieces of code that are required to do this, whether it's the UI front end or the back end work, along with all the automated testing that we do to build and help verify as we develop, to make sure that we develop a nice, clean, user-ready product. So it's a very team-oriented framework that we work in with a lot of automated testing built into it to get the best product possible to our customers.
That's very cool. I know that when you did the lunch and learn about this, all of the sales team were on the edge of their seats and very excited. And actually, I think we've heard some reports from the field where this is actually being used, that it's working out very, very well.
Excellent. I'm glad to hear that.
Cool.
Great. Well, thanks for joining us.
Trent, that's been fantastic. Appreciate you joining us. Chris, we're actually receiving a transmission from an old space probe right now.
That old thing.
It must be information from a long time ago, but let's go back to that.
And it really wasn't very reliable at all. We could do a lot better than this. So I thought, I'm going to go out and do this on my own. We're going to do a really good job on this, and we're going to make those customers say, wow, because we're going to do something that's never been done before. Our goal is to create a product that solves problems that other people tend not to even look at because they're too challenging.
When you're dealing with live systems, 24/7 operation is essential. You just don't shut down the plant because you need to do an upgrade or even a configuration change, where it then becomes something that we can maintain and enhance. You need one of your own. Well, a language should be obsoleted. So today we can create code, but code that we wrote 20 years ago will still run today. So it's forward compatible that you do something today, it's going to work in the future.
Wise words indeed. In fact, I think those are the wisest thing I've heard to come out of the 80s. And joining us today to interpret what they said and let us know sort of how that all worked out is our president and also chief VTScada software architect, Glenn Wadden. Welcome, Glenn.
Thank you, Chris. Yeah, that's a pretty cool presentation you guys put together. Thank you for that. That's very neat. But one of the things, it does show us that there's a lot of stuff that's remained the same over the last decades, things that have remained pretty constant over the last 30 plus years in the business. And if you take a look at some of the stuff, systems really need to survive for decades. If you take a look at things that are still pretty prominent now, and I think in spite of Trent talking about Sparkplug B, which I'm sure will be around for a very long time, Modbus has been around since 1979, and I think that's the most common protocol that our customers use. So you've got to think that your system that you're using today has to be future-proof. You have to look at something that's going to be around for the long haul. And we're looking at how can we get there with VTScada. Looking back, we say that the systems that we deployed 30 years ago could still be run today in the current versions of VTScada, and will still be able to run decades from now. So trends in the business I look at are that, back in the 80s, we were still pushed for performance, and that was why we put in this idea of the reactive programming language. We were the first ones to create such a language. And it's all built on the idea that I/O and comms were, relatively expensive then, but those costs are continuing to fall year over year, that the comms costs are going down because of internet and wireless, instrumentation, PLCs cost, various IoT devices are getting very cheap. So the result of which is that you can afford to bring in data now that's a lot less valuable as a single piece of data than was required to justify SCADA a couple of decades ago. Ultimately, you get bigger systems. Bigger systems have more value. The aggregate value of a SCADA system is much more than it was 20 years ago. And you could extrapolate forward and say the value of this data going forward is going to be higher in the future, just because more and more data is going to be in there, and they're going to be able to do more and more with that data. And you can tell data's king right now. One of the consequences of that is that there's really too much data for a single person to deal with. It's not uncommon for a system to have 100,000 I/O right now. No one person can manage looking at all that data and making sense of it in real time. So you have to really look at things that are going to be ways to manage that. And I saw a little bit of that with Zane Spencer's presentation on templating, high performance graphics, ways to manage large amounts of configuration and data. Alarms are your primary tool for dealing with report by exception. The operator can't watch everything all the time. So it's not really that strange to have 500 operator pages. Well, no one's scanning through 500 pages. So you really have to have the system really be quite autonomous and listening for problems. And going forward, you can see that the idea of AI is probably going to creep into this business, and they going to have a system that's going to watch over and watch for patterns that after the system. Now it's all moved to, or not all, but it's a lot of systems moving to the control room, basically in their pocket. They're walking around with smartphones. The big screens are now used for configuration analysis, troubleshooting, that sort of thing. But the performance issues on the system are continuing to grow. Reactive programming is a great way to handle that. We've got the system to make sure that as the I/O grows, we can handle that scalability. Redundancy becomes more important because the value of that data is becoming more important. So redundancy through synchronization, it's not just having a backup that turns on. You have multiple machines that are running in lockstep all the time. And then you still have the configuration costs become more, the data costs may become cheaper, but the actual cost of configuring that needs to be cheap. So you watched Zane Spencer's presentation 10 minutes ago from MPE. He showed how templates and plug and play stuff, the MQTT Spark Plug B presentation from Trent just before me was again, plug and play with that. That's the way to get this configuration cost down. So we're still looking at how are we going to take these systems that are built today, run in the future. We'll still add more configuration options, more capabilities, more features, but the stuff you build today will still run decades from now. So you'll hear from that spacecraft going out in the future about, stuff that's done today is still running out there in the future.
We'll look forward to hearing those words when we actually travel forward in the future in a few minutes.
I can't wait to hear that too.
At the backbone of what you're talking about is this idea of the reactive programming language, which you talk about in another video, which we have on YouTube right now. And maybe Natasha might, by the way, say hi to Natasha, who's monitoring the live stream, everybody. And she might drop that link in there, and you could learn more about this revolutionary reactive programming language that Glenn developed, again, back in the 80s.
Thanks, Chris.
Great. Thanks for joining us.
All right.
Oh, Dave, I think you are muted. And
I am getting that put underneath all my shirts.
Just wear a hat that says you're muted.
So on that note, anyway, thanks, Glenn. I think we'll just quickly rocket into the future, as Glenn alluded to, and we will see you guys there.
Hey guys, my belly feels funny. Not sure about this anti-gravity thing here in the future. But anyway.
Oh, it's nice to be back here, though. Every time I come back to the future, I get a little bit more accustomed to that tingly feeling. So it's nice to be here in the what is this hotel? The SpaceX Hotel,
yeah,
the X
that's right. X Space Hotel.
It was
that's
a little. Right. The view was nicer last time we were here, though.
Yeah,
it's true. Every time they do this, they build the new hotel.
Just kills the view every time. What's the deal? I don't know. Anyway, I think I don't know. Fast. Yeah. Who knows? Maybe you won't even see Earth pretty shortly.
That's right. So, guys, I really liked, Glenn alluded to the fact that at one time we were looking at primary data, and then we started bringing in all the secondary data because the cost of data was cheap. But now we're at the point where the secondary data is really too much for anybody to look at. But the data is there. So in retrospect, somebody can go back and they can say, okay, we saw all of this stuff leading up to point 2, whatever occurred. And they're looking at ways on how they make the operator's view more able to see that now. But Glenn also talked about that AI system, and it is neat to me that that secondary data is really the core that makes the AI system work. So you see how this whole thing has kind of come together. You got all those pieces put in place to allow the AI system, and I think the big decision in the next little bit will be whether or not that AI system is able to make decisions or make recommendations, and at what point do you make that that barrier, or how do you even choose or set up the AI to say, okay, you're only allowed to make these types of decisions?
And it's not something that we can sort of shy away from, because it's the SCADA as it is now is very reactive. Person sitting in front of screen saying, "Oh, a thing happened," react. Whereas the AI is about taking that data that we've been collecting and making some proactive choices, so that not only are you avoiding those situations, you're actually making those recommendations you talk about. You're actually having the system pay for itself in essence. By increasing efficiencies and saving money over time, year over year.
And that's a huge thing and I think that's what will become the focus of the dashboards at some point, will be the dollars and cents, and how they'll be looking at how things are performing as opposed to what needs to be done, because what needs to be done will just be happening.
Yeah, I think somebody we were talking to were saying that in the future screens will all, a criticism of a screen they had built was there's not enough dollar signs on it.
Right.
Yeah, that's a great point. And measuring, well, I guess the good old KPI type thinking, that things should become simpler to interpret, and really, as you said, dollars. If you can figure out dollars or whatever currency we're in right now here in 2050, whatever it may be, it'll become more important, I think, to look at that and see where those savings are.
And Pete, you have the number on global energy used just to pump water, I think.
Yeah, well, it shows up a few different ways, but in general, it's around 20%. And when you consider just that alone, I mean, compressed air is still one of the highest. But when you look at water, so if you can reduce kind of run times of pumps or equipment like blowers, in treatment plants, that makes a huge difference, massive.
Yeah, a lot of people sort of look at AI as being suspiciously from the point of view of the operators, that it's going to replace them, but in effect, in a lot of ways, it actually will be where their incomes are coming from, because obviously budgets are always going to be challenged as complexity and size increases. So those kinds of efficiencies are going to be more and more important in terms of maintaining payroll of actual humans.
That's it.
Yeah,
that's it.
That's right.
Yeah, and go ahead. Sorry, Chris.
Well, just in the last few minutes of our future panel here that we're having, let's talk about protocols and communication. We've already talked about this changing model from a polling model, which is sort of traditional SCADA, to the IIoT model of publish and subscribe, which is, people sort of think of that as being something other than SCADA, as a new thing to replace SCADA. But like a lot of things, it's just a new part of SCADA.
That's right.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah. Well, like when you start thinking about communications in general, one thing that kind of came to mind recently, and it actually has a bearing in the metering world when it comes to, especially where you have battery-powered devices. Communications, as they evolve, one thing that a word of warning. if you have battery powered devices, and typically like water meters that are battery powered can have battery longevity that's around 20 years. So we're 30 years ahead right now, as we are here sitting in space. But so 20 years, it's quite a long time. Changes to communication networks can actually hammer batteries and reduce it from 20 years down to maybe 3 days. So that's one thing to bear in mind, that as we change in communications, and some of that could be moving to things like NB-IoT or 5G type platforms, that really you need to be in control of what those network changes are and how they might impact your business if you're a utility, whether that may be water or any other one that may be using other devices that are battery powered, for instance.
Right.
All right,
Cool.
I think that's all the time we have for our wearing our futurist hats.
We should be expecting a call any time now.
Well, I think, do we have questions? I think from a certain fourth member of our team. I think, isn't she is she jumping on?
Oh, I forgot. Yes, that's right. That happens first.
No worries at all. And we're actually moving to the bar for this, so it's a bit more relaxing. Hey, Natasha.
Ah, that's better. Yeah, slipped into something more.
My favorite place to ask questions, of course, is in the bar.
That's it.
And of course, we can't drink too much because we can't get drinks by our glass helmets. But,
that's right. It just keeps banging into us. It's just not working right here anyway.
It's funny, we didn't think that through all the way.
No.
But anyway.
I tried to fill mine with water, but the 0G made a real problem.
Turned into a gas. So Natasha, do you have any questions for us from the future?
I do. So this one came through Instagram. I put up yesterday on our story for people to ask us questions and we'll get them answered live. So somebody asked, if I start with a demo app, can I move it to a full version of VTScada in the future?
In the future.
Ooh, in the future.
In the future.
Yes.
Moving right along.
Yeah, very easily.
Yeah, so basically they just need to change their key to a key that supports development, and then they can carry on with all the work they've done.
But I don't think they can export a change set for an application that they created using a demo license and then...
They can't bring that into a normal runtime. They have to go... It has to touch a paid development license, but in order to do that, it's pretty straightforward. So all they have to do is contact us and upgrade what's there, and they can install the paid version, and all of their apps and their previous work will be sitting right there waiting for them.
Awesome. Excellent. I do have another question. I'm going to hold off of it because I know we are running a little bit late into our next guest. So I'll hold it till the end of the program. And if anybody else has any questions, put them into the YouTube chat and I'll come back later and ask them.
Sounds great.
Thanks, Natasha.
Yeah. Well, I guess our trip to the bar was a bit of a disaster. So how about we take the turbo lift back really fast back to our space suits. So just like that, that's really fast. Yeah. So so anyway, we'll see how it's going. Oh, actually, yeah, we got a call coming in from someone who's it's Ian from Dispel. So let me answer it. Hey, there's Ian.
Hey, Ian,
welcome.
We can't hear you, Ian. Maybe you're muted.
We can't hear you yet.
Even in the future, this is a problem.
Hat.
So we've no audio. Actually, yes, you're coming from Earth.
In the future, he's transmitting with telepathy.
Could be a latency issue.
That's it. We have no audio from you.
We don't have you yet.
Can you jiggle? That's it. You just have to jiggle. Yeah, we'll just tap dance inside our spacesuits. That's it.
So Dispel, we'll just talk a little bit about Dispel. I met Ian, and we all met Ian and Dispel at our last VTScada Fest. I was working the room when he did. He's going to drop off and come back on again, where he did a really exciting presentation. Basically, I can't remember what the actual terminology was, but basically creating secure networks by creating virtual networks that basically rearrange themselves periodically, so people aren't able to, bad actors can't sit there and kind of test a system over time to figure out, where everything is located and where the vulnerabilities are. At regular intervals, the whole system kind of resets itself into a whole different architecture. And not only was that an interesting subject matter, but the presentation itself was really great. I enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah, he had everything timed right to the beat on that.
That's right. That was one of the best stories I've ever heard kind of presented. I wonder, is Ian back?
And today,
can we hear you, Ian?
No.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, yay!
Oh, we got you.
There we go. The connection worked. Our satellite connection.
Time communication.
It was the satellite connection there. Was yeah. Anyway, I think Natasha might have actually gone out and just twisted the antenna around a little. So yeah, cool. We got you now.
There's nothing like hitting the old control console a few times.
Yeah, you just have to do that.
Okay.
For being turned off and on again.
I very much appreciate the chance to actually be speaking to you right now. So give me one moment. Share my screen.
No problem.
Now you can see my screen. Now you can see a PowerPoint. Now I can tell you a story.
Perfect.
Okay.
Well, it's over to you if you want to tell your story.
Thank you very much. So this, back in 2020, was a can of coffee. And if you followed the instructions on it precisely, it would generate for you 4.8 pots of coffee, which when applied to a standard break room mug would yield you 20 very wide awake coworkers. And in a task diverse environment like water or gas or oil, the one thing you could rely upon back in 2020 was that just about anybody knew how to make a pot of coffee, but everything else was relatively siloed. Why a pot of coffee? Because this is the most powerful tool in 2020 for quantifying things. Specifically, let's say you work in operations and someone has told you that you need to drive out to a job site, which is 10 minutes away, or you need to send an employee there. Well, there are two ways you can explain how much that's going to cost you. The first is you can go through the numbers, which eventually equate to if the employee is making 100 grand per year and they're driving their car of choice from the motor pool, which is a 350. The end result of that is going to be that it will cost them about $17 just in pay, and then $5.90 for the equipment and the gas to do the 20-minute round trip component. Nothing to do with what they were doing once they got to that equipment. That's a number. But an easier way to think about it is for 20 minutes of driving, you're dealing with 2 2/3 cans of coffee. It's a universal, simple thing that people can look at. And in 2020, one of the key challenges people were dealing with was in the United States to achieve group consensus on what a problem even was in the water industry was taking an average of 4.7 human beings. Obviously, there was some rounding going on. To the story. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to demonstrate that you can use a can of coffee to explain something that's rather complex but rather ubiquitous right now in the US, and that is a polymorphic network topology. You see, for lack of an alternative option, the IT community has gotten itself lost, and they, with the best of intentions, have taken a misunderstanding of the purpose of remote access and turned it into a pandemic of misbuilt and misapplied tools, which, when used by operations, slows down the performance of the overall plant. And fixing that problem is the biggest problem that most companies are dealing with right now. The only reason why computers are attached to equipment these days is because it helps maximize plant performance. It's the only reason why VTScada is so powerful. It helps improve plant performance. And when we think about plant performance these days, there are 4 metrics that matter. The first is uptime. The second is responsiveness, which is something that becomes a meaningful topic over the next 30 years with the ability to react at a computative level rather than having a human be involved. Then there's crew safety. And finally, there's operating costs. Now, this tree can carry on getting bigger and bigger behind it, but those are the 4 metrics that matter at the highest level. And it's no surprise that 30 years ago, these were the same metrics. And as a result, the moment you could string a cable out to equipment rather than drive there, people started to do that. And that meant that remote access went up just about everywhere. Just about no one noticed it, but it was there. And 30 years ago, the time it would take to go through a remote access connection was between 2 and 10 seconds. It was a question of whether or not you remembered the commands to punch into the screen. But it didn't take very long before the world got filled with bad people, and people began to have to implement measures to protect these remote access systems. And the result was, contrary to most of the things that got faster as time progressed, remote access got slower. By 2020, the average connection time in the US for a water utility was 5 to 12 minutes, depending upon the size of the organization, which was damaging plant performance. So to understand why this happened, we have to take a journey down some cybersecurity lanes. This is not new for anyone from the future, but for those in the present, for lack of an alternative option, cybersecurity was long an exercise in building castles. And as time and money allowed, you would add additional walls or improve the ones you already had. This strategy is known as static defense. Now, it fell out of fashion in the physical world over 70 years ago because castles don't move and they are very easy to find. So unless you are constantly and correctly not only anticipating the types of attacks that will be launched against you, but then building defenses against them, someone will find you, analyze you, work the problem, and punch a hole through your castle. The other challenge, though, is that everyone knows how to build a castle, at least to some degree. Everyone can build a wall. But the world had to move on. So what they moved on to was putting what they cared about into vehicles and moving them around. Admittedly, a vehicle is a much more complex thing to have to build, but by shifting yourself around, it was much harder for someone to obtain and maintain target lock. Now, this strategy is known as moving target defense, and it began to be implemented at a network level in versions that didn't really work in the 90s. And in 2008, it finally began to be implemented in a manner that started to work. We'll get back to all of this in a bit. Let's bring this back down to the world of operational technology. This is your landscape, A and B. A is an operator, a technician, or a vendor. B is a piece of equipment that they have to deal with. Now, they've got two choices. They can either drive there or they can remotely link to it. And it doesn't take very long to say, well, I'm going to remotely connect. But because there are bad people out there, you bring in IT. What IT is used to doing is protecting data. So what they do first is they say, okay, A and B are talking to one another. What I'm going to do is encrypt the connection between the two of them using a VPN. But as an attacker going after operational technology, I already know what that data is. It's sensor data. It's command data. It is not something I'm interested in decrypting and spending a lot of time figuring out. What I care about as an attacker is finding A or finding B and launching an attack directly against one of them. The classic one being a systems integrator is maintaining a large amount of equipment in a well field. So what ends up happening is that person is using a laptop, they receive an email on that laptop, or they just happen to go to a website, that laptop gets infected, and then thank you very much, I burn right through that VPN and infect B. So from a static defense perspective, the solution here is I'm going to need to build walls around A and B. Doing it around A in 2020 was relatively straightforward because A is a laptop that was built in the last 3 years. It was built to accommodate new technology. But just as we have problems with battery life going from 20 years to 4 hours, if you change the communication protocol, you also have the problem of you've got operational technology equipment which was never built to have anything protecting it. And the result is that when you start adding layers around operational technology, it tends to slow things down. So for people on the phone from the present, what does this look like? Well, for most everyone here, you're on the left, the asset cluster's on the right. First thing you do is you VPN to your corporate network because that's where the best firewalls are. The next thing you do is you go to a jump host on the IT side of things. You probably know this as a command line terminal. From there, you go to a jump host on the operational technology side of things. And from there, you perform an RDP connection down to a virtual desktop that some administrator stood up for that particular connection. Now, this looks elegant from a network engineer's point of view. And that is a meaningful problem because in practice, this explodes. It takes 5 to 12 minutes for a user to get through all of those steps. From the administrator's point of view, it takes them 15 minutes just to stand up all of that stuff so the user can go through. And they have to cycle it every single time if they want to conform with the latest standards, which came out in finalized format in November of 2019. But if we convert this to coffee can format, static defense remote access will set you back about 2 2/3 cans of coffee before you get into the component costs. That's the exact same amount of money as it costs to drive with expenses 20 minutes, 10 minutes there, 10 minutes back. So resilience and fault tolerance is something that the whole world this year decided they were going to sit down and write about. And they brought all the standards together under one header, which is NIST 800-160 Volume 2. A man named Ron Ross, who is far more eloquent than I am, wrote that thing with his team. And what he talks about is the need to start using moving target defense to shift the strategy away from one which is damaging plant performance. So let's look at moving target defense for a minute. What is it? You're building a network that shifts over time. That shifting is known as a polymorphic act. And by creating a network whose topology is polymorphic, what you're doing is you're preventing the attacker from finding you. And that network disappears when you're done doing your job, so there's nothing to obtain a lock on. And if an attacker infects A, you have these components that are built to shift, the result being that if you make one so it's sacrificial, it gets infected, it gets destroyed and replaced, the attack doesn't make its way all the way through to B. If you're dealing with NERC-CIP, you've already seen these things. Better yet, the network doesn't exist. After the person's completed their job, the infection can't get to B no matter what. The side effect, though, of all of this is if you are able to build a moving target defense or polymorphic network, you've built a lot of infrastructure that's very good at reacting very quickly with one another. Otherwise, the whole thing falls apart. So you can hit 88 miles an hour right quick if you're using an MTD network. This is what it looks like, shamelessly using the company that I currently work for. But you punch in your username and password, you punch in your multi-factor, and I want to make abundantly clear here, this is just indicative of what moving target defense network platforms look like in terms of speed. You copy your password, you hit launch password, you punch it in, hit continue, and you're in the system. That was 21 seconds versus 5 to 12 minutes. The reason why your IT team might not have heard of this in 2020 is because they very reasonably might have thought this stuff was from the future. We're going to look at the cost of 500 MTD networks. In 2014, if you wanted to sustain 500 MTD networks, you needed to be a sovereign state. It had set you back $250 million and cost you 2,000 and take 2,000 people. Why? Because these networks were being built and maintained by hand. Dispel was one of the companies that came up with ways to automate the construction of these systems. So by 2018, there were over 40 companies competing in the moving target defense space, and the price of building and maintaining 500 networks had fallen to $7.5 million, and it took only half a human being to run. By 2020, there were only 2 companies left, Dispel and one other. The cost of sustaining 500 MTD networks had flattened out at $3.8 million, and it would set you back about 1/6 of a human being. In other words, someone had another job and they just check it every once in a while. The implication of this cost collapse has been that just about anyone, be it Las Vegas or a small town in North Dakota, can afford to have one of these things be managed by a third party. And if we were to look at a well site deployment with 50 wells, it would probably be setting them back $110 a day or $2.20 a well, which is roughly the equivalent of 1/4 of a can of coffee. So I hope you understand now what polymorphic networks are and what it has to do with plant optimization. If you want to do anything about it, please feel free to email me. Thank you all very much.
That was great as always.
Great, thank you, Ian. That's yeah, you're a fantastic presenter.
Not a moment wasted.
That was super. Thank you so much.
Well, thanks for joining us, Ian. I'm glad to have you back again. This is, I guess, the 3rd time you've been with us, so we look forward to number 4 at some point in the future.
Yes. Thanks, Ian.
Cool. So, Chris, I think you and I are up next. So for those of you who came to see the high diving act,
although we're going to call that the spacewalk at this time.
That's right.
So
Yeah, no, that's a good point. So Dave and I, we've been talking about VTScada throughout the broadcast, as we do often. VTScada, of course, is the SCADA software created by Trihedral, the company for which we work, and the company that sort of powers the automation village. So we're just going to take a chance to show you one of the important aspects of VTScada, which is its ability to have multiple people. We've seen already people actively configuring VTScada during this live broadcast. But today, the high dive and act we're going to show you, and Dave is sort of setting things up here right now, is that we're going to show you how multiple people can work on the same page, the same tag, the same objects at the same time, and how VTScada kind of makes sense of all that. And ultimately tracks it and allows you to go back and trace actions and roll back changes.
That's right, Chris. So to do this today, I've got a very basic screen in front of me. I can go into my settings, and I don't really have anything special set up here. There's no redundancy. There's no connection to Chris's computer or anything right now.
Right. You are an application, one server.
I'm an application. I basically built the app. The only thing that I did to get ready for this was I made this Sparkplug-B test tag, and inside of it I put a port and a driver tag. So that's the only things that I've done, and inside that port tag we're basically just connecting in here to the HiveMQ broker with no SSL.
Cool. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to steal your screen, and there we are, and I'm going to bring up VTScada, and what I'm going to do is I want to add myself as a redundant node to this application that Dave literally just created. So I'm going to go create new application. I'm going to go to my advanced section and get from workstation. This is what we do every time we go to a trade show, and our giant trade show booth has like 6 different servers in it. Yes. And we do this from one another. And this drop-down menu basically lists all of the servers that I can see and contact on this network. And right now,
so I guess
Dave
it's
and I
important to note that, yeah, Chris and I are connected over a VPN.
Right. Very important that's the case. So right now, I'm able to go in and look at all of the applications that Dave has on his computer, because we're in sales and marketing. There's a great many varied applications running, but I can see the Sparkplug-B application that he just showed us. I'm going to hit next, and I'm just going to hit finish, and it'll just take a few moments to basically pull that application from Dave's computer over the VPN, install it on mine, and then we'll just have one short step to go through in order to make us 2 redundant synchronized nodes on the same distributed application. So this is it. You're seeing us do the high dive and act right here.
That's right. So Chris, while that's happening, I can see your application just loaded up there. I'm going to grab it back, and I'm going to actually set you up as a redundant server, and then I'll pass it back to you to maybe connect our devices.
Sounds good.
So you've grabbed the application back. You're looking at my computer again now, and I'm just going to open the settings here, and I'm going to put my computer in as the primary server, and we'll put Chris laptop 4. So I put Chris's computer as the backup server. I'm going to hit apply, OK. And then if I jump down into the version log here, we can see that my computer is in black. It's showing as connected, and Chris's computer is in red. It's showing as that it's getting an update. So if we go back into that in a little bit, then we should see there's Chris's computer in black now. So the computers are synced. So Chris, if you want to grab it back, and or did you want to add it back, and we'll add IO?
Okay, great. So I'm going to open up now the tag browser, which shows us all of the those same 2 tags that Dave already created, HiveMQ and HiveMQ driver. And I'm going to go into the properties of this, and I'm going to open up connection, and I'm going to select automatic tag creation and apply.
It's funny, I saw that box literally tick on my screen live as a...
So this is the beauty of now there's 2 people working on the same application at the same time, and now it'll just take a few seconds for it to go out and pull in those tags and tag structures from the edge device. What are we talking to, by the way?
The short answer is I don't know. We've gone out to an MQTT broker, and we're just asking it if there's any Sparkplug-B devices running on that broker.
So I think it's still chugging away.
So we see, it's possible as well that there is no device on that broker right now. We did have a device earlier in the day that was running. This one perhaps is no longer up.
Now, it did take a second earlier when we were testing this yesterday. So it still might come up, but basically the idea is it will go in and then dynamically create all of the structures associated with that device. So again, it just saves on integration time, so that people, I mean, that's kind of the superpower of what we call the IIoT and this publish and subscribe model, is that you're not just every single piece of IO you want to bring in, you don't have to go and manually add it and connect to that.
Right. So Chris, why don't you bring up the just that overview page, and we'll do a little bit of work together on that page, perhaps.
Sounds good. So here we have a bare page. And I see. Look, I've just brought up this page, and Dave's already been working on it. So here we have two dials that Dave added using the Idea Studio on his computer, and we can see that they're both running automatic. They're just basically cycling back and forth. Or have you connected to data yet? Looks like they're still using automatic.
Yeah, it's just the automatic data.
Now I'm going to close this, and I'd like to get into the fun. So I'm going to open up the Idea Studio for myself and open that up. Let's go into decorations, and I'm going to add, and unless Dave has already done it, a rounded rectangle, just to kind of give this, and then I'm going to send it backwards. Oh, and look, and while I was doing that, Dave was doing something else. He added these two buttons. So this is an example. Again, Dave and I are separated by about an hour's drive, and but we're connected securely over the VPN, and we're both able to work together to configure this application in real time.
Yeah, so I think the big point was, that we're working even on the same page using two fully independent computers, and we're both running VTScada in a fully redundant fashion. So it's redundant historian, it's redundant alarm dialers, it's redundant thin client servers. It's, we've done everything required to.
And in a moment, I'll bring up the version control version list. But it's important to note at this point that there is no limit to the number of redundant computers you could add to this to any application. So basically, you need to purchase a license, and however many of those licenses include development, that's how many people can be working on the system at any given time.
Yeah, that's right. So, and it's something that's fairly new to VTScada, is they can go in through the thin client, through the VIC, and actually do that development if they don't have VTScada installed on their local computer.
Right, that's a good point. So here you noticed earlier, Dave added me to the server list, which means that we are automatically synchronized in real time. And he also showed you briefly the built-in application version control utility. And this is built into every application. He didn't have to set this up. It's not a third-party thing. Every application you create has this by default. So once you create the application and start doing things, all of those things are recorded. So you can see all the things done by Dave, all of the things done by me. If one of us wasn't in sync, say I disconnected my laptop and got onto an airplane, well, in the future when we can get on airplanes, and made some changes, then I would be in red because I wasn't synchronized from Dave's point of view.
In fact, Chris, I'll shut my application down just in case you do make any other changes. Then I'll probably come up in red there, and it'll say I couldn't give it to Dave.
Great. So you're gonna shut off here?
Yeah. So when if you roll something out, I'll probably turn red there.
Oh, I see. Okay, great. So I'll just add something new. So open the Idea Studio. I'm just going to do that, and then we'll wrap this up. And then if we go back, we'll see that Dave is red, and that's it.
Awesome. So
great, super.
On that,
well,
why don't we reduce the stress with a little bit of another draw?
Yeah, let's give away our last prize. And I will unshare my screen.
All right, so you guys are probably looking at the prize draw screen right now.
Now they are.
So again, just as before, email natasha.lutz@trihedral.com with the subject line, future-proof your SCADA.
Future-proof your SCADA.
And we
Exactly.
ran.
I wasn't sure if you were
Yeah.
tied up in VTScada or looking at the page that said that. So
Excellent.
Yeah,
So great. I think that's. Go ahead.
Yes. Sorry, I was going to say we ran over today as well. We knew we were going to be pushing it anyway, and we gave our guests a bit more time as well today. And anyway, so hope everyone's been finding it pretty good.
Thanks for hanging in there.
Yeah.
We have a lot of stuff to cover in a very short period of time, and it's always tough to keep these things exactly on point.
Exactly.
When you're live.
When you're live.
So,
we have some questions as well, Chris, that just came in the chat. So someone was just wondering, is it possible to share today's speech materials from speakers to our email? So I'm sure we can arrange something like that. We'll contact you offline. And then
one thing to note is that this whole stream will be available publicly online too, if you want to go back.
It's
and
here
look through anything.
forever.
Perhaps we could make those materials available as links in that description.
That's right.
For this live stream going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And through my space visor here, I'm reading as well. So, do you have any plan to integrate Python programming into VTScada? And it says also built-in graphical report template. Yeah. And I guess that really goes back to our discussion around programming languages and what will be there in the future. So one of the challenges, I guess, that we have is that everyone has is that what programming language will be around in the future. We integrate all kinds of different ways of doing things and methodologies, and the likelihood is we're unlikely to integrate Python directly into VTScada, I guess, for the simple reason that go ahead.
And the reason is that when Glenn Wadden, when he was on earlier, and he talked about back in 1986 or previous to that, when he saw the need to find a way to standardize SCADA applications, he looked around at the program languages at the time and decided, for a variety of reasons, not to use them. But it's interesting to note that none of those languages now exist. So, but VTScada script, the reactive programming language that Glenn created instead, is still alive and well. So in terms of the forward viability of your system, the same reason we have a built-in version control is because we can make sure that is always going to work with VTScada. Our own alarm notification system is always going to work with VTScada. It's never going to get depreciated by someone else who from a third-party company that has its own business decisions to make and don't necessarily care that we've built our SCADA future on their technology. It's all ours, all us.
Exactly.
So just one thing to add to that is that you absolutely can work in other languages and interface with VTScada. It's just not inside of VTScada.
Exactly.
So you can do like an F stream, or you can write data out to JSON. VTScada has built-in JSON parsing. You can make data available in all kinds of different ways. We see people pretty often even will just spoon up a quick API with like a JSON response, and they'll use VTScada to just grab data from another system if it's doing an analysis. So VTScada has a REST interface, so you can hit VTScada, grab data, process it in Python script, and then make the response to that available in a JSON API, and make your decisions based on that. So they say, and that's things people are doing. I know myself, even I've done it a little bit in VTScada just to try out different things. So they say it all works great. It's all pretty easy to do. And that, what I just described, doesn't require any special programming in VTScada. That's built in. It just requires a little bit of programming in Python.
That's great.
Exactly.
So any other questions?
That's I think all that popped up. There was a few bits and pieces. But
hi guys.
Oh, Natasha's there.
There are actually a few other questions. So someone wanted to know when the date of our next event is, and I'm assuming event meaning our next virtual trade show.
And that, as far as I know, will be December 17th. Am I right?
Yeah,
I think we literally just decided that a short time ago.
That's right.
So that will be on our website and going out to, however you found out about this, it will be coming there again.
And the next question that was asked, Joseph wanted to know if there is going to be a VTScada Fest in 2021 because he enjoyed 2020 so much he cannot wait to go back.
Well, there will be something.
Don't know.
I think the answer is there will be a VTScada Fest of some kind.
That's right. Yeah. So
we should say what that is, though. We sort of take for granted that people know what we're talking about. VTScada Fest has been our annual SCADA users conference. We've been holding it in Orlando, Florida for the last 4 years. Mm-hmm. And last year was our biggest yet. It was sold out. We had to move to a larger hotel. It went enormously well, and literally the world shut down the next day. So we're incredibly lucky that went as well as it did. So we're still looking at the best way. We're looking forward to next year as to what the best way to remount that festival, and we'll let everybody know as soon as we can.
Exactly.
Cool.
And on that note, we should probably wind this up pretty quick. Thanks again for sticking with us, everybody. A few things we'd like you to do right now. If you would, we'd be grateful if you could go down and hit the subscribe button on this page, or hit like on this video. Those kinds of things help to unlock features and increase our reach, and we'd really appreciate it. And it means that we put out lots of stuff on this channel that I think you'll find useful, tutorials and interesting case studies. So again, take that right hand, put it on the mouse, go hit subscribe.
Cool, that's it.
Cool. And after you've done that, jump over, download VTScada Lite, give it a shot.
That's right. That's really a big thing. It's there for free. It's not a trial. We have a trial. But VTScada Lite is a perpetual industrial license for up to 50 tags.
Awesome.
That's it.
All right.
So I guess we're going to beam back onto the bus and head home.
That's right. But first, we should thank all of our guests. I want to thank TJ Murphy with
Atarian Events Powergen, exactly.
Yes, that's right. And Zane Spencer with MPE, Trent Hilliard, our very own Trent Hilliard with VTScada, and Ian Schmertzler with Dispel, right. And Glenn Wadden, our president and chief software architect. Thanks everybody for joining us today.
And thank you.
Cool. All right, and thanks to everybody watching.
Absolutely. Okay, here we go.
Keep putting my hand out of the helmet.
Bye.